Hey everyone. Excuse me, can I have everyone's attention? Excuse me, we're going to be getting started here in just a minute, so please grab the last bite of food and start taking a seat. We'll be getting the talk started in just a minute.
What do you have?
All right, so I wanted to start off by welcoming all of you here to Atlassian. I wanted to thank Atlassian for graciously hosting this event tonight. To introduce myself, my name is John Egan, and I'm one of the engineering managers on the growth team at Pinterest. Been at Pinterest for about 3.5 years and started organizing this meetup about 2.5, 3 years ago because I saw a lot of forums for talking about growth from the product perspective or the marketing perspective, but didn't see many forums that kind of had the engineers from the growth teams talking about some of the things they were working on. So started this meetup. We try and meet once a quarter and just try and provide a forum for growth engineers to come and share some of the things that they're working on, and provide a forum for people to connect with other growth engineers and just learn from what others are doing in the Valley. So our first talk tonight is from Nick from Eventbrite. Nick is an engineering manager on the growth team at Eventbrite, and today he's going to be talking about some of the testing they do to do pricing optimization and in general driving growth at Eventbrite. So please give a warm welcome to Nick.
Testing. Can you guys hear me? Everybody good? Cool. All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Nick Popoff. I'm an engineering manager at Eventbrite, and this is going to be a talk about some fun A/B testing that my team did about maybe 6 months ago, trying to prove whether this concept of assortments was going to be a good idea for Eventbrite. This is going to be a mix of introducing some concepts around pricing and assortments, and then talking through our crazy A/B testing experience. All right, so in case anybody doesn't know, Eventbrite is a ticketing company. We sort of got our start doing ticketing for the long tail of tiny events, and then over the last 11 years, we've grown up into hosting some pretty huge events. Our business model is free, so if you're hosting a free event, it's absolutely free to use our platform and all its features. If you're hosting a paid event, each one of your paid tickets, we're going to charge a fixed amount plus a percentage of the paid ticket. So that fact is going to come up later in the talk. Yeah, and then also it's what's called a two-sided marketplace company. So I work on the event organizer growth side, where we're trying to get people who want to host events to use our platform. And then there are other teams that try to get event attendees on our platform who are just looking for fun things to do. All right, so sort of the start of this project was I was in a meeting with Nels, who's our VP of pricing, and we were just analyzing what had been going on in our business with the organic acquisition channel of event organizers, and we were just looking at how the business was growing in different markets. And Nels just out of the blue was like, it just feels like this business is something that's happening to us. It's not something that is happening because we are taking actions. Like we would see like, hey, like, our business is really not doing well in the UK. Or like we're doing great business in Singapore, but it wasn't because anything we were doing. And Nels is like, this is not acceptable. Like we have to take charge of our business. So around that time, Nels attended a talk by this guy. If you haven't heard a talk by him, he's incredible. I think of him as the Gandalf of capitalism. So his website has these 3-minute videos that actually go over all the concepts that I'm going to talk about way better than me, so check it out. But sort of the core point of this talk that he gave is this idea of assortments. And when Nels heard this, he was like, whoa, this is the answer to my problem. But Michael Deering's like key statement that he always says is, history matters, all of this has happened before. Like none of us in this room is doing anything new, none of our problems are new. These are all solved problems. You just have to take an interest in history. All right, so what is assortments? So assortments is a way to rethink how your offerings work and how your customers value what you're providing. So in this case, it's like someone could walk into your restaurant, they're barely hungry, they have like a nickel in their wallet, but they'll see like, all right, we've got toast, I'll buy some toast. Someone else is like, it's something about them. They're like, I am a healthy person. I only buy healthy things. It's worth it for me to spend extra money to have a healthy meal. So they just want to put some avocado in their toast and tell themselves they're being healthy. And then finally, if someone is like having a brunch, it's Sunday, they're just chilling out, and they're like, I deserve the best in life. I'm going to drop $16 on whatever the heck that is. But you can see, these are psychological statements. These have nothing to do with what it costs the company to produce that toast, that avocado, whatever. So an academic thing going on here is that in the past, the way we thought about pricing is like what are the cost of the goods sold? Like how much did it cost me in labor, in materials, and I'm gonna add like a 5% profit margin on top of that, and that's my sale price. That's completely backwards. The way you're supposed to price is start from the far end, which is the customer has something that they want to solve, or they have a need, or they have an identity that means that they want something from you. And unless you understand that value to them, you don't know how to price your way to solve that thing. And the gap between their aspiration and your price is what they think of as cheap. And it has nothing to do with the cost to you to produce that thing. So this concept of good, better, best, and the title of the talk, is this idea that once you realize that each sale is a psychological conversation you're having with individual customers, you realize it doesn't make sense to think of that as a single pricing transaction. Instead, what you need to do is have different offerings where, in this case, someone sees almost no value in your product. They're like, you're barely solving a problem for me. Why would I even use you? But you could offer something extremely targeted just for them at a very low price that they'll actually see that value. And then going all the way up to your most loyal customers where they're like, my whole company will collapse tomorrow if you stop solving this problem for me. And they're like, just take my money, take all my money. To them, the value is at the far opposite end. If you think you're just gonna have one conversation with all your customers, that's what you're screwing up. You have to have separate conversations. All right, and then the foundation for this is basically the most productive friendship of the 20th century. These guys, Kahneman and Tversky, If you don't know about them, they're psychologists that basically proved that the entire field of economics was bullshit. And they did this through experimentation on actual human beings. And they proved that human beings are fundamentally irrational. Almost all of our decision making is irrational. We're not actually machine learning, computing bots in our brains. Instead, we have really sloppy, buggy, approximate mental models that we apply to our situations. And so they came in and basically upended everything. And this book is amazing, so if you want to learn more about their ideas, I highly recommend it. Check it out. So yeah. So we took all this in, and we tried to create an experiment plan. So what we wanted to do was figure out, like, what are the upper bounds of pricing for a premium version of Eventbrite, at which point the customer is going to be like, it's too expensive. So we wanted to see what that limit was. We also wanted to see, so our pricing is like a fixed fee and a percentage. We wanted to see like which one of those things is more important than the other in terms of raising or lowering it. And then we wanted to do some classic A/B testing around visual arrangements to see like what would cause them to take actions. And then in all this, we wanted to do as close to zero development as possible. If we could do it with like one developer with like 1 day for each test, we try to design it that way. Luckily, Eventbrite has its own A/B testing framework, so we didn't have to build that infrastructure. We just had to set up the test. Yeah, so a challenge we had is basically we're bringing like, 4,000 new event organizers onto our platform every day. We were trying to test some crazy new ideas on them. So how do you do that? We really didn't want to give people a bad experience, but we also knew that was like our only opportunity to catch people who aren't already familiar with our product. So it's their raw value of like what they think they're gonna get from Eventbrite, and we wanted to see how they would react to things. So the idea we came up with was sort of the classic, like some fake onboarding screens getting you through your choices that at no point are we going to offer you something that we're going to take back later. So we only tested higher prices. And after you make it through the A/B test, we immediately show you a screen saying like, just kidding, that like we have a promotion where actually you get the low price. Well, and we also only said that we're going to take away features, but then at the end of the test, we said, just kidding, like you actually get all the features. So we had to optimize our test to avoid making promises we couldn't deliver on. So this is the first screen they see after they sign up, before they would go into our event creation process that prepares them that something strange is about to happen. Then we realized that our free organizers are totally different than our paid organizers, and we knew that if we didn't segment those people off and have them not go in our test funnel, there was no way we were going to get good results. So we try to grab just the paid organizers and put them through these tests. Then finally, we just iterated on a whole bunch of screens that are sort of like this. If our designer is here, he would immediately say like, this is not the way we want our product to work at the end of it. We were just testing like, how do people react to lists of features, prices arranged different ways. And we basically just watched to see what did people click on. And then we just changed elements of the screen. All right, so what we saw is it took maybe like a week each test to get to significance. And what we saw right away was the distribution of people going to the basic versus premium offering was very interesting. Right away we were like, oh, we have something here. Like there is actually people who are willing to pay us more money than our current fees. And also there are a lot of people who, if we have a basic stripped down offering, that's what they want to click on. So that was like proving that the assortments idea was viable. So we got excited. The bad news is like 2 weeks in, we started seeing the down the funnel data, and it was super bad. Like we saw that a lot of people were dropping out of our event creation funnel. They weren't saving their event, they weren't publishing their event. And at Eventbrite, this is really bad because this is our revenue for the next quarter if we're killing this now. So 2 weeks in, even though the data looked promising, we almost killed the whole thing because we were like, we just can't afford to test here. Our theory is basically that customers at that stage of the journey aren't ready to think about pricing. They just want to play with the product. And so us forcing them to have this conversation then meant they're like, we're just going to go somewhere else. So the way we worked through this is our product manager was able to make the argument to our executives that the early experiment data had a financial upside that was exceeding the downside of this temporary decrease in our new user acquisition. So even though this number was a very large dollar number, we were able to convince them that it was like worth it to let us keep testing in this area, even though there was going to be like a temporary hit. So we actually kept testing for another month after this. The whole time we were stressing out about it. So here's what's hilarious. So that was 4 months ago. So 2 weeks ago, we finally did a complete cohort analysis of revenue, and that batch of users brought in more revenue than the equivalent last year. We're still struggling to explain this. We have some theories. One theory is the classic, like when you add friction to an area, a lot of the times the people who are dropping out were never going to be your customers anyway. They're just randomly clicking around. Another theory we have is Eventbrite is a great way to host content that has nothing to do with events. We let you create listings pages with HTML, and it turns out that people bought the hell out of our product to host really weird stuff. And so our risk team will track it down and turn off these pages, but a very large amount of new signups are basically bots preparing to be used for different things. So anytime we make changes in our onboarding and we see hits to metrics, sometimes all that's happened is we broke the bots. Yeah, all right, so the key lessons is that we actually did see a reasonable distribution of like, as we raised our price, we saw a drop off of people interested in the premium product, but it gave us this really clear sense that it was like under our control. Like we can adjust the pricing and we have a rough sense of how that will impact the percentage of people who go there. Another thing that's interesting is like a really large percentage of people see a low value in our product. And so we think they'll be excited when we have an offering that's half as expensive as our current, that just gives them the basic ticketing engine that they need. The other funny thing is we've been presenting our fee structure a certain way for 12 years, and we proved we've been doing it backwards the entire time. The fixed versus percentage, the whole time we've been leading with the percentage, but it turns out that our customers are more concerned with the fixed component of the price. Then finally, we proved that even if we see a hit to the onboarding metric, in this case, we proved that there is a range where it's actually not going to hit revenue because these are low-value organizers. Yeah, so this is the team that I work with, so I'll end there and take questions if anyone asks questions. Do we pass the mic around, or someone had a question? Did you want me to wait for a mic? I don't know.
My question was, what percentage of your overall users that were going, were you feeding through these tests? Was it just a smaller percentage? Did you try to kind of do a canary test or whatever where you only rolled it out to 5 or 10%, or did you just do it on the whole user base? Yeah, so we just did a 50-50 A/B test. So our volume of new event organizers coming in is not that big. Whereas our growth teams that work on attendees, they could like turn something on for like 1 day and reach significance, whereas for us, it takes a while.
So I'm coming from the product manager perspective, where you mentioned that you see a huge initial hit to revenue, and that's a scary thing for a lot of people, especially the executive team. What did your product manager do that was able to convince them of this, and how long did it take before that actually happened?
Yeah, so one thing we she basically was able to chart the sort of the hit to first publish rate, so the expected financial impact of that, ranging between the worst number we saw during testing plus the least worst number. So you could see the cost to Eventbrite. She was able to chart that against the sort of upside, the growth we were expecting to see from assortments based on what we were actually seeing in the tests, like the revenue upside. And she was able to show that basically we could accept up to a certain percentage hit to this metric and still be profitable at the end because of the concept of assortments. So the good news is that it turned out it had no financial downside, that hit, so that's only good news.
How did you come up with your initial assortments to test? I mean, did you simply have a list and just go, well, we're just going to try all combinations, or did you have some knowledge that fed some initial state or initial test?
Yeah, so we had some ideas because we had been talking about it, and then we worked with a consulting company that's been doing assortment consulting for a lot of different companies called Simon Kushner, and they did surveying of our customers, and they're able to identify sort of the key differentiating features where, like, this is a feature that's absolutely essential even to the lowest value customer. And then we were able to sort of say, like, okay, these are the features they will get versus all of the features that only the higher value people want aren't given to that group. They're reserved for the people who go with premium. One more question?
Apart from the revenue upside, if you broke it down into just extra revenue from the price increase and factored that out, was there equal or more retention on the number of events people were actually creating? Or were they creating fewer because it costs more and it still worked out?
So that's part of the challenge of doing A/B testing in this area, because the time delay. So people sign up, they usually publish their first event within 14 days. And then sometimes those events don't go on sale for months, like sometimes many months. And so you have to wait to see the actual revenue happen. So that's why it took us 4 months to see, like, all right, did that disaster actually turn into lost money for us or not? Cool, so I'll be around after the talk, so, like, come hit me up if you want to talk about this. Okay?
Cool. Our next speaker is a tech lead at Pinterest. He works on the emails and notifications team, and today he's going to talk about notification volume optimization. So please give a warm hand for Dr. Bozal.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi everyone, welcome to the talk. My name is Bo. I'm going to talk about notification volume optimization at Pinterest. So the first, what's the problem we're trying to solve? Why do we even optimize notification volume? So at Pinterest, notification drive a significant amount of user engagement, like DAU and WAU. So the question becomes, what's the right frequency we send to users? And then basically there are two sides. If we send too few notifications, the engagement metric will hurt. Like DAU, WAU, they will all drop. On the other hand, if we send too frequently, first it will hurt user experience, and also it will actually hurt long-term metrics of the site, because people will get angry, they will unsubscribe your emails, they will delete your app. Gmail, like several other email vendors, they will penalize your reputation. Like they will have a higher probability to put your email into spam folder. so that your users could not even see those emails. So all these consequences can be caused by sending too frequently. And also you hurt your brand, like in the user's mind. So the key to solve this problem would be to use machine learning to do more personalization, and based on whether the user actually liked the email or whether you really need to send the email to or notification to a user to decide the right frequency for each user. So this problem has been, we have been working on this for a while, and before even I joined the company, like we had the first version of machine learning based volume control system. So like before that was even developed, we have basically no machine learning, and this is the first version using machine learning to control frequency. And when it was shipped, I think early 2016, it has huge impact. What it does is basically is something called like dynamic cooldown. So I will explain in details. So basically, we have many different types of recommendation at Pinterest. Like some are popular pins, some are like the boards you recently followed, etc. So basically, we can train machine learning models, like a CTR prediction model, to predict what's the probability that each user click different type of emails. Then basically, for each type, and we can compute the user's CTR for that email type, and we can calculate the CTR's percentile among all users. And then we can decide something called cooldown days based on the CTR percentile. The definition of a cooldown day is that, say you send this email type today, you cannot send the same email type in the next K days. The general idea is that if this user has higher CTR, we'll make the cooldown shorter so that we can send that more frequently. So this idea all makes sense. So basically, every day we use these CTR models to rank all the emails that not in the cooldown period, and we pick the highest one to send, which quite reasonable. Then after we got V1, we've been using it for a couple months, and then we start to realize some of the issues. The first one is that actually there's no direct control of the total volume a user gets in a period, like in a week. This has several consequences. For example, it's very difficult to do rigorous experiments. So at Pinterest, we always try to improve the content or improve the recommendation algorithms. And a lot of this experiment could result in like increased coverage or volume of certain email type. And then if we want to do experiments, the question comes, say you control an enable group and your enable group has increased the volume. You really don't know. Then you see, of course, typically if you increase volume for notification, you will see some metric gain, like weekly active user gains. But it's very difficult for you to know that whether those gains come from just the volume increase or it's just actually come from quality improvements. So if you want to be more rigorous to design this kind of experiments, ideally you want to say that for the control group, if the enable group has higher volume, we want to try to match the volume for the control groups. For example, we can use the actual volume to send the best available existing email so that control enabled have the same volume, that we can really tell whether the gain comes from quality. And also, it's very difficult to iterate on ranking models. Sometimes we update our ranking model. We always, because the cooldowns based on the CTR percentile, we always have the volume changes. So it's also difficult to judge whether your new models are better or not. And also, it's very difficult to add new email types. Once we add new email types, we will increase volume. So basically, let's come to the second problem is that all these cooldown rules are difficult to optimize. And objective function is unclear. For example, why we set 14 days cooldown instead of 12 days, right? So it's not easy to directly automatically optimize those parameters. And there's also like some email types are generally better globally. So as a result, they should be sent more often globally. But if we want to, even have different parameters for different email types, that's even more complicated, which we don't want to do. Then we decide, okay, we may need to just rewrite the system with a better mechanism. The objective for this V2 system, we call it the budget-based system, is that we really want to have a direct control of total email volume or notification volume for each user, like in a week. That's basically, we decide a weekly budget. So this basically can help us improve experiments rigor and engineering efficiency, can allow us to easily add new emails, can allow us to easily test new ideas to optimize volume. And we also want to have some clear object functions that we want to optimize. Then we can basically use machine learning to directly optimize for it. So it's going to be automatic. There's no kind of manual process for tuning parameters. So the system looks as follows. We have a notification service running every day to process all users. When a user come in, there's a module to something called budget pacer. The budget what the budget pacer does is every week, start of the week, it will load the user's budget or volume from a store, and it will try to pace that volume to every day. So a simple pacing algorithm could be like even pacing, meaning if you have 3 a week, you will pace it to Monday, Thursday, or Sunday or something, or Saturday. Then the user come in, it will ask the pacer whether today we have budget to send. It's more like an ad system, like the budget is really not money, but it's the number of notification we can send. So if we do not have budget, then we don't send. That's easy. If we have budget, then we go to the ranker to rank all the available emails and pick the best to send. And then there's an offline component that take the email send, take the additional signal from the users, basically to learn the machine learning models, and it uses the model to do the scoring, we call it budget scoring, every couple of days. So to compute the volume for each user and publish that volume to the store. So that's basically how things work right now. So what's the object function we want to use to our machine learning models? The first question is, what's the objective we want to optimize for? Let's say I want to directly optimize for site engagement, like daily active user. Then the simplest version. So what does this mean, right? This means that for a fixed number of notifications, you really want to directly optimize for daily active user. Then this actually means that if the user is too active on your site organically, you probably don't want to spend your money on them, because even you don't send notification, they come to the site anyway. Why bother them, right? So the simplest version of this kind of modeling is that we can have some utility score to capture what's really the utility of sending a notification. And one simple version could be like 1 minus the probability they come to the site organically times the probability they click notification. So this basically assumes that your notification channels and your organic channel are independent. And all these probabilities can be learned by your machine learning models, right? You can train a CTR model on your email clicks. You can train another model to predict how likely user to come to the site organically. So we have 2 plots here. So the left plot, the x-axis is basically the activity level of the users, so basically the number of days they're active in the past 28 days. And the y-axis is the CTR of emails. So generally, you can see that when users come to the site more often, they more likely to click email because they love Pinterest. They want to click, everything that we recommend. On the right side, so basically, if you use this simple formula, the x-axis is still the activity level, but the y-axis is this utility score. You observe that for users are on the far right, meaning they're very, very active already, their score is kind of low, right? So, but on the extreme left side, like meaning the users don't even come to the site, their score is also not the highest. the users that have the highest score are among this casual region where they're kind of active, but not too active. They're more like 4 to 15 days active. So those are the users you really need to use notification to get them more engaged. That'll give you the best ROI. So this visual is a good start. I guess if you want to start with something, you could use this. But for our purpose, we want to further improve it. There are several issues with the zero score. The fundamental one is that it's making some simplicity, too simple independent assumptions on the independent of the channels. Sometimes, it kind of makes sense, but actually your notification channel and your organic channel, they're quite dependent. So as a result, this score kind of penalizes too much on very active users. But actually, for those users, notification can still help drive them come back to the site. And also, if you want to use this to decide a weekly budget, meaning how many you want to send in a week, then the question becomes, actually, every send in a week, they are not independent as well. So like if you send one, and if you send the second send doesn't have the same probability to drive user come back to the site. So basically, we want to further improve it, and we did V1. And in V1, we basically want to learn a full machine learning models to predict your target metrics, or we can call them rewards. These rewards can be pretty flexible, like could be DAU, could be if you want to optimize for revenue, you can do something there. At a high level, what the machine learning model does is that it's kind of really learning a function. The function takes a parameter of the users, and take a parameter of the number of notifications you want to send. And the label or prediction of the function is the reward that you define. And after you're able to train this kind of machine learning models, then you can actually calculate the incremental value of every additional email sent. And basically, you can select the most valuable ones among all users to send them. So basically, with this, you are able to find out the volume for every user. And for the features of these machine learning models, historical site organic visitation rates are very important, and the email or push notification CTR is important. One interesting thing to note is that like Android and iOS actually have very different CTR for push notification. So it's important to separate them into two features. And also you want to calculate this kind of feature in different time windows to capture like the more recent behaviors versus the more longer behaviors. And also it's important to use the user's sign up age, like whether this user just recently signed up or there has been a long veteran user. So this will allow the model to have different prediction for different users. So when we observe what the model does is that for really new users, we really decrease the volume in the first couple of days compared with the control. So that because when users just sign up, we really don't have good signals to generate good recommendation. But overall, once the user gradually gets more signals, we'll gradually increase the volume so that the long term, again, is high. And also we can have other site engagement features like number of pins, number of balls, etc. that basically capture how likely the users are engaging with your site, and some user demographic feature like country, gender, age, etc. So here are some results. Compare with the control group, we actually treat our user into 3 separate groups. Like some users they only enable their email, some are only enable their push, some are enabled both channels. Overall, we can significantly decrease the notification volume overall, and also dramatically increase the CTR in both email and push. And that also drive site engagement metric, like DAU. So basically, we are able to email, we drive 15%, increase CTR by 20%. Push we decrease 5%, increase CTR by 17%, and DAU, site-wide DAU is up around 2%. And that's actually 10% of DAU driven by total, like all notifications, which is very significant. And also another interesting anecdotal thing that happened is that because we treat Android and Android and iOS in different signals, in the end, we end up having much higher impact on Android users. So when we ship this experiment, that actually helped Pinterest Android DAU surpass the iOS for the first time in history, which is very interesting. So we did some analysis. So on the left are the email volume in the control group. The blue plots are the volume for the control group for different activity levels. And the red ones are the optimized volume. And these two plots have the overall same average volume, so they're more comparable. So you can see that with the optimized version, we tend to send more to the people that are not like core users, more like, but still not extreme dormant users. Like on the far left, which a significant amount of users that are extremely dormant, we actually drop their volume. But for the people that are kind of casual, we increase the volume. So this means that the new algorithm makes your each notification have higher utility to a final metric. On the right side, this is more like from a user experience perspective. We look at the x-axis is the email open rates, or CTR, of the users, and the y-axis are the volume for the optimized version and the control version. So we're also able to see that for people who generally like to click email, they end up receiving a little bit more. And the people on the far left, like close to zero, meaning that they never open email, they even receive much less than control. So these two plots generally show that the left shows that the new system is basically able to make the notification each send more valuable to the site. On the right plot shows that even from the user perspective, it feels more personal. So conclusions, we recently did this V2 volume control system by doing some global optimization with machine learning. So we are able to directly control the total notification volume a user gets. We end up reducing a lot of volumes and increase CTR and user experience. And we improve the notification utility to site-wide engagement. And this also helps us improve experiments rigor and engineering efficiency. And we make it easy to test further ideas. This is the collaboration project. Kahneman, Rachel, Berkay, which are both engineering our team, and John says. That's all. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
So when you say you have direct control over the total volume, is that a reference to engineering implementation, or the fact that like the marketing org might end up with some user list and send emails on their own cadence, which would be unwanted?
So it's more like the total number of notifications a user gets every week.
But does Pinterest have a centralized system where every single email from any part of the org, from any working group to any user is counted?
Actually, in this project, we only consider the recommendation-related emails. But for some additional email, they're outside the bucket, like the legal-related emails that has to be sent, so we don't use it. But our plan is to use this system to control more like the recommendation-based emails. But for other kind, if you have a chat with your friend, those emails or notifications, you should always get them. So yeah. Yes.
How do you measure the success of push notifications? Is it just like CTR, or do you have some metrics after like measuring that a push was clicked on?
The push, yeah, generally CTR and also like our top line metric, like DAU, WAU, and stuff.
But like, do you follow like any other metric, like if the user did some follow up with some activity, like X number of searches or scrolls after clicking on a
Yeah, well, sometimes we look at that, but overall we just look at top line metric, and also like whether the user delete the app. It's also like if you send too many, they will just delete. Yeah, I mean, last one. No? Good, okay, thank you.
All right, well, I'm excited for our last talk of the night. So our last talk is from our hosts here at Atlassian, and we have Josh, who is a principal product manager at Atlassian. He's been at Atlassian for 6 years, and he's going to talk about some of the work that they do on the growth team here. Please welcome Josh.
All right, can everyone hear me? Sweet. So I'd like to thank John for organizing and Alex for helping set up. It's really good to have a meetup like this where we can all share different stories. Today, as John said, I'm a product manager here at Atlassian. I've worked in product in JIRA and HipChat, and I also currently work in the core growth team, which sits separately from product. Today I'm going to be talking to you about becoming a growth car salesman. It'll become clear in a couple of minutes. And some of the things I'm going to be talking about today are about product expansion. As a lot of you probably know at Atlassian, we have multiple products, and expanding users from one product to the next product is very important to us. I'm going to walk you through a specific JIRA to Confluence journey that we have been experimenting with a lot, and some of the results, as well as some of the lessons that we've learned while we've been doing that. And we're going to have a special appearance by this guy throughout the talk. So at Atlassian, if you're not familiar with us, our mission is to unleash the potential in every team. And really, we're all about enabling team collaboration. We have a whole set of products that solve a lot of different problems. And we recognize that teams don't just have one problem that needs to be solved. They have many, many different problems. And not just in tech, teams exist in lots of different industries. Having that approach and being able to have a whole bunch of different products gives us a special ability to be able to solve many different problems that teams have. So product expansion, we define this as when we have people who are using one product and we're able to get them to start using a second product. We really want to do this to help teams solve the problems that they have. We do not want to be the car salesman. We do not want to basically be pushing things on you that you do not need. We really, truly want to be able to help you in all of the problems that you're trying to solve. Again, I mentioned before, JIRA Software to Confluence is an example here. If you're using JIRA, Confluence is a good product that sits beside it that solves similar and related problems, and they integrate well together. But it's not just product expansion. A lot of you probably work at companies that only have one product, but it also applies to ecosystem. If you're trying to get people to use integrations that you've built with other companies, or if you have paywalls in your app and you need people to go from one stage to the next, you need to be able to communicate the value, and it's kind of an expansion. The thing that we do not want to do is be this guy and really be sleazy and salesy and just keep pushing things at you when we know you don't want them. So we try to do a lot with targeting and segmentation and things like that to make sure that we're doing it in the best way possible. But we know that from our customers, people use our products together. An example is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory at NASA. They use it to put software on the Mars rover. Spotify uses it as their internal service desk, and they use Jira Service Desk and Confluence together. And Cochlear, which is an Australian company that helps deaf people be able to hear with cochlear implants, they actually developed their software for these implants using Jira Software, Confluence, and Bitbucket. So we already know that there's a natural baseline here, and our goal is to increase that baseline. We don't want to, again, just keep throwing things at you, but there is a lot of customers out there who probably use one of our products that don't know about other products, so they don't know what the other products solve and what jobs they have to be done. And in a graph, this is kind of what we're trying to do here. So if we have products 1 and 2 at the top, so we can see that the MAU for these products is growing. And then the blue line represents the users that have both products. And really, we want to be able to inflect the blue line. We want to have more people using both products. And instead of just it growing at a linear rate, we basically want to be able to help more teams solve their problems, as well as it's obviously a good business effect for us as well to have more people using multiple products because it makes our products stickier. JIRA Software and Confluence is the example that I'm going to walk through now. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of experiments that we've run and some learnings. I'm pretty sure most people here probably know what JIRA is, but it's an agile project management tool, allows you to do backlog planning, etc. A whole bunch of you probably use it. Confluence is a wiki, allows you to do product specs and things like that. So this is the first experiment that we ran. It's basically in JIRA. If you put a longer description in, we actually have a system. We call it the engagement platform. And it's a segmentation system and notification delivery system that we have in our applications that allows us to do very targeted delivery. We use a third-party system, a segmentation system called Lytics, and we basically pump using Kinesis and Lambda, we pump a whole bunch of events into Lytics, and they're able to use those segments that we create in that from behavioral events to target these different notifications to people. So this one is specifically targeting people who had created 5 issues in the past week, so we can see that you're actually doing something. And we're basically saying, hey, you've put a whole bunch of stuff in, would you like to try Confluence because it might be better for what you're trying to do. The second thing we did here was we know that Confluence is a good replacement from our research for people who are using Word docs. I know it doesn't necessarily apply. I don't know if anyone here uses Word docs anymore, but in a lot of other industries people do. And it's a good way of telling people that, hey, instead of uploading Word docs, do you know that there's another product? The first problem we ran into wasn't an external problem, though. It was the product teams themselves basically saying, hey, I don't know if anyone else has been in this position, but they're like, hey, this is mine. Don't touch my shit. My product's my product. Like, don't come in and like put stuff in it and annoy our users, etc. And at the same time, they're basically like, we're not sure about those experiments. Are they really going to work, etc. So the first problem we actually had to solve was an internal one, and we solved this by using a SWAT team. And a SWAT team is basically the growth team, the marketing team, and the product team who come together. We have daily stand-ups, and we're able to basically stay on the same page. We have a bi-weekly planning meeting that allows us to plan, use ICE scoring, that type of stuff to plan what experiments we want to run. The biggest thing this does is gives all 3 teams a sense of ownership. And there's nothing better than having people feel like they own these experiments and feel like that they're involved in what growth's doing. So the first lesson is to work closely with product. Bit of an obvious one, but we really found it to be helpful, and we really found that once we started using SWAT teams across the company, especially if you're at a bigger company, it to work really well for communication and ownership. So we got the results back from those first 2 experiments, and we saw that there was actually a lot of clicks. So the green is the control, but because there was no dialogue in the control group, there's no clicks. So we got a whole bunch of clicks. Our evaluations stayed flat. And really what we were trying to look for is like, hey, if all of these people are clicking on this message, why aren't they converting? And so we were really puzzled by this. We didn't know why, and we kind of did a whole bunch of studies. We did a bit of research, and we looked into the analytics. And it turns out that it comes down to different permissions. So in our products, we have people who are end users who create issues and edit issues, use the backlog, etc. And then admins who are configure JIRA, configure user management, etc. And it turns out that these end users are the people who actually want the software and who want the second product. But they have to convince the admin, and then the admin has to turn it on, and then they have to tell the user. And when you get to bigger companies, and when you're like a 10 or 15, 20-person company, it's okay because you can walk across the hall. When you're a 500-person company, it doesn't work as well. And when you actually think about this, it's a funnel. Right? And the biggest problem in this funnel is this part, because I know when I evaluate things, if I look at a product and I have to go and talk to IT, I'm like, I'm done. Like, there's no point. It's not worth it. And this is what actually was happening. So that was our hypothesis, and we went after it, and we said, okay, using this engagement platform that we have, because we have the ability to send notifications in product, let's target the admins with some messages. So when the user requests Confluence, the user's like, hey, I actually want this thing. It sounds kind of cool. We actually started to send the admin some messages, and we said, hey, in product, hey, this is your user would like this. And we started to send some emails as well. And so we were able to actually change. We saw a 22% increase in the number of evaluations that we had over the control, which was really good. The team was quite happy that that our hypothesis was correct and we were going after the right thing. But the trouble is that activation still really didn't change. So we had to start thinking about what the next step was. The second takeaway here is really to understand the micro funnels. We all talk about the AA, RRR funnel and like high-level funnels that we all model in our products, but really funnels lead on to funnels, and there's even micro ones in this scenario where users can't do something because they're blocked by the product, and trying to unblock it in specific ways really helped. But this isn't all we want to do. We've talked up to now about getting people from JIRA into Confluence, but we don't just want people to go to Confluence and then leave. We want them to kind of hang around and actually solve their problems. We really want to do a proper Confluence activation and then cross-product integration. So the next iteration, there's a lot of iterations in here as well that I'm not necessarily talking about, but the next iteration that worked for us, this is in JIRA. And what we did was we actually started to show some of the value of Confluence in JIRA and like a powered by Confluence style thing. And you can see on the right, there's a couple of different things. So you can do a JIRA report or a decision or a sprint plan and things like that, things that Confluence is really strong at. And when the user came in here and clicked this, we'd tell them, hey, like, there's some information about Confluence, but actually you don't have it. Would you like to have it? And this iteration, we actually, down the bottom here, I don't know if you can see it, but we actually allowed people, the end users, to put a message to their administrator in to make it more personal. And we started to use things like avatars to basically say, hey, I'd really like this. Hey, Will, you're an admin. I'd really like if I could have this product. But we didn't stop there. On the administrator side, we we presented a dialogue that essentially tells the admin a bit more about Confluence. And it says, hey, you're about to enter a trial. Would you like to do this? We found out that 52% of people did this. And this was the second screen that we presented. It's a bit small, so I'll read it. It says, would you like to give access to the users that you already have to Confluence? And if you're going to give them access, would you like to notify them? So this was like a little growth step that we did that basically not only allowed us to acquire the Confluence product, but helped us to cross-acquire all of the users. In this case, there were 64 users in the JIRA instance, and we really wanted to get them into the Confluence side. So the results came back, and we were blown away. We had a 145% increase in trials, and it was astonishing. Unfortunately, I can't share the real numbers, the raw numbers, but this was the increase. I can tell you that it was widely talked about at Atlassian, and we've refocused a whole bunch of teams on projects similar to this because of it. So it was really, really valuable. And even better, we saw an increase in activations. It wasn't as high, so it didn't follow the whole way through, which means there's more blockers down the funnel. But because we focused on value to the user, we were really able to get this flow working much better. So that's the third takeaway. As a product manager, I tell my engineering teams that all the time, but it really shows through when you do something like that and show how the value works. We're still iterating. We have things to do like activation on the Confluence side of things. Maybe we can use some of the data from JIRA and actually personalize the onboarding and that type of stuff. There's a whole bunch of experiments that we can try. The three takeaways: work with product, think about SWAT teams, think about people, communication and ownership from all three teams, product, marketing, and growth. Think about your micro funnels, like really think about how everything can be modeled as a funnel, because I bet you most things can. And finally, focus on value to the user and really communicate that in the experiments that you're doing. And hopefully, we can come across not like this and a little bit more like this. Thank you. Any questions? Should we take the mic? Right, so the question is about how do the SWAT teams work in practice? Do we get one representative, or does just like everyone pile in? Generally what we do is we'll get the growth team. So you'll generally have like 3 or 4 or 5 engineers, maybe a product manager, maybe a designer, and they will all go. and then you'll get one person from product, or 2 people from product, and 1 person from marketing. And then marketing can give you the content, the copy, that type of stuff, and product can give you the subject matter expertise, etc. And we do like daily stand-ups is very valuable. I don't know how many of you work in companies that have different locations, but we, as you can tell, I'm Australian. We have a Sydney office, we have an office here, we have an office in Mountain View, we have an office in Austin and New York. There's a lot of time zones to cover. A lot more FaceTime, a lot more meetings. We use chat a lot. We have a lot of VC calls, and like really being diligent about the time zone thing. Like Sydney doesn't come on until 3 o'clock San Francisco time, so you kind of have to make sure that they know that you have a question. They have to answer it overnight. Doesn't always work. We haven't solved it. Yeah.
So I liked your slide about like territorialism being a challenge, but
Yep.
do you ever think that like for your users, they're barely even aware that JIRA and Confluence aren't the same thing, and so you're bringing into this an assumption that your users care that these are separate products? Like, can you imagine just thinking of it as just a single product with a totally new pricing structure?
Yeah, right. So we've talked about doing experiments. So the question was about like, instead of it being 2 separate products, why not just make them features of the same product? I think Atlassian's mission's always been to allow you to use whatever pieces you need, and that's why we've always kept separate products. I think most of you probably know that we were a behind-the-firewall software company for a long time, and we've transitioning to the cloud, and a lot of our services are now deployed in the cloud. As we do that, I think that things like this start to change, right? You don't need to actually buy something and download something. You just get features. So like, do the products matter as much anymore? And I think that no one has an answer for that at the moment, but they're big questions that we're thinking about, and we might even try some experiments where we do that. We take the product names away.
I inferred from your story about getting the admins to give permission for the users to use the app, and then the option to inform the user
Yeah.
that they had, in their wisdom, given permission. I inferred from that letting the admins take credit for turning on the feature was actually part of it. So is that a correct assumption on my part, or am I getting too psychological?
I definitely think there's a bit of psychology here. I don't know if, I think in a lot of companies, people actually don't know the admin, right? Like a lot of the time, at Atlassian we got 2,500 people. I don't know who there's a bunch of IT admins. There's a whole team. I don't know who they are. So maybe in smaller companies where the admin can be like, hey, I turned this on for you all and I'm helping you solve a problem. We definitely see that with champions. We call them champions. And we see that all the time where someone goes in and they're like, right, this company doesn't know how to collaborate well because they've got products all over the place. Let's standardize on a bunch of stuff. And that really works. So maybe in this case. We got one more question.
Have you done any trial duration tests? I noticed you had 30 days listed on.
Yes, we have. I don't know how much I can talk about them actually, but we have trialed 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, and I don't know what I'm doing. All right, 7 days, 14 days, and 30 days. Currently, it depends because when you buy one of our products to start with, it's actually 7-day trial. But when you already have one of our products and you add another one, you get 30 days because you're already a customer. We found that actually there's no real significant difference between 30 and 7. So we were like, okay, well, let's just do 7 because it's better for the company from a revenue standpoint. Like you get it earlier. And like there was no difference in the activation rates or anything. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
All right. So I wanted to first thank all our speakers today, Josh, Nick, and Bo, for coming and sharing a little bit about what each of their teams are working on. I also wanted to thank Josh for offering to host the event here at Atlassian, and Atlassian's workplace team for helping set everything up. That's all we had tonight, so thank you all for coming. You can hang out and grab any pizza or drinks that are left over. We just have to be out of here by 9, but feel free to hang out for the next hour. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.